So welcome to Your Circus, Your Monkeys, Accounting for Your Goals. I'm Kyla Graham. I'm very excited for those of you who are joining us. A little bit about me before we get started, or more about Young, Black, and Giving Back. So excited that you all have signed up for Give 828. We're glad to be a sponsor. We've been working with the Give 828, the Young, Black, and Giving Back team 2 years now. So super excited to be a part of that. Here is Nima is coming in. So Nima, before we get started, is there anything you wanted to share with those who are on the call? Any updates that anyone should be aware of?
Hi, are you, did you mention my name? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I was asking if there's anything, any updates or announcements that people should be aware of.
No, but welcome. Looking forward to the webinar.
Thank you. So like I said, I'm Kyla Graham. CNRG Accounting Advisory is my company. We are a Denver-based virtual accounting firm that focuses solely on nonprofits. I'm actually licensed in several states, so I consider myself to be a serial mover. So I'm licensed in Colorado, but I'm also licensed back east in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. For my professional background, I have served as a financial statement auditor for nonprofits. I've moved from that role to being director of finance for our startup. And so being able to know, like, we're going to do all the things. So as nonprofit leaders, you are familiar with whatever needs to get done, you are the one responsible for that. And I noticed in that role that creating a time for nonprofit leaders to say, I have a question about the money. I need to talk about this grant. I need to talk about our spending. What does our budget look like? Was helpful for them to say, this is what we're going to talk to Kyla about. And so that's what inspired me to start CNRG Accounting Advisory back in 2016. So 5 years in, this presentation is sort of a culmination of the things that I have come to know to be true. But most importantly for the agenda is going to be about what you need. So as part of the Give 828 community, I want you to ask the questions that have been burning on your mind. What is it that you need to know? So over the next few minutes, we're going to be less than an hour because I talk fast, and with everything being virtual, I like to make sure everyone has a break before the next meeting. So the things that we'll have on today's agenda, or just some ways to describe your financial activity, because I know some of you might be in various stages. I wanted to make sure we talk about what are the first things to implement to track your financial health. And then, like I said, you tell me what you need to know. So is there a question that you've been asking? Is there something that you've been Googling that you're like, I actually don't know, and I want someone to just tell me the thing? Any questions, comments, or concerns before we get started? All right. Hey.
Hello.
All right. So the example I'm going to use throughout today's presentation is Your Circus, Save Our Circus. So that is my fictional nonprofit because I am into circus arts. I do flying trapeze when I say I'm behaving. And it's something that I got into after passing the CPA exam. So here at Save Our Circus, our goal is that every high school student will have a circus skill. I think it's important for all organizations to remember their mission, to think about their vision at the beginning of any financial activity. If we're going to talk about the budget, let's talk about why we do the work that we do. Centering your mission will make it easier to think about, how do we spend this money? Is this in alignment? Should we be worried? Just giving yourself that forethought to say, I need to center what we do so that I understand why I'm making this purchase. I've been an accountant my professional life, and accounting can be it can feel like it's very rigid and it's very straightforward, or it's being presented as such. And I think it's important to think, whoa, is that what my organization needs? And so don't just say, okay, that's the chart of accounts we were given. Think about, is that the chart of accounts we need? And so we're going to talk through like what is the chart of accounts and those things. But I just wanted to put that out there. So the first part of getting to know what are the things that are going to make your organization successful is the people that are involved. And so depending on the stage of your organization, there are various people. So we have staff members. If you have come to the point where you are hiring people, they're going to be your board members. They are part of your volunteers. So part of the key volunteers. And then you have your funders. So those are the people who are giving you the money. Maybe you're self-funded and thinking about getting some external funding. And so who are going to be the people that you need to think about when you're considering your decisions? These are the people who are going to say, oh, I think we should do it this way. Oh, I had this bright idea. I heard about this opportunity. So they are the ones who have sway. And it's important to think about them and what they need so that one, you can keep them on track. Sometimes people have amazing ideas, but the timing isn't appropriate to bring that up. And so you really want to think about, how do I keep this person on track? I find this especially to happen with some board members. Maybe they heard about a grant opportunity and they think, oh, Save Our Circus should apply for that. Even though we know that this is about food insecurity and we're about circus, because the money's available, I think we should apply. And so you want to make sure you can tell them, like, that's really outside the scope of what we do. We don't want to add more work to our load. And so let's talk about what else is out there. So those are the people, these are the people you should have in mind of who are they, what are their roles going to be, what decisions might they be a part of. The other piece, though, is what they need. So you're thinking about, okay, they do this thing. Also think about, what are they going to need to make an informed decision? What are they going to need to fulfill their duties? So if it could be a staff member or a volunteer, they might need to have a better understanding of your program or your project status. So what is this? How is this program doing? How are they going to track it? So if this is an organization, if you are saying, hey, you're responsible for this budget, how will they know? How are they going to keep up to date with that? Another thing, this is specifically your managing team. So your executive director, your founder, maybe the treasurer, the other board members are going to probably be more interested in cash flow. Do we have enough money to get through the month, through the quarter, through the year? These are going to be some of the things that are going to be weighing on their minds. Some of the things that is also going to be helpful are grant timelines. So sometimes we apply for the grant, but we don't think about, oh, when do we have to spend the money by? And that's something I saw. So I worked in an organization and we were like, oh, let's apply for this grant. Great. But 2 days before the grant deadline for spending, we still had $16,000 that we hadn't spent. And so I'm going around to people saying, hi, did you still need the equipment that you said that you wanted? And asking my boss, like, can we just go ahead and make the purchase? Everyone said that they want it. Can we go ahead and buy it? Because what we don't want to do is have to return it. So no one wants to have to say, hi, funder, so glad you gave us the money. We didn't actually need it. That to me just doesn't feel like a good practice. And so really being upfront with people to say, hi, we applied for this money. We have to spend it by this date. This is what I need from you, you need to spend, and both, what do they need to report on? So really thinking about that to make sure that people are aware and they don't feel that, oh, I can't spend money. I think that's what often happens is everyone here is like, oh, we don't have a lot of money. And so they go into, I will not spend anything. And you're like, no, I had money for this though. So I need you to go ahead and buy that. And so that's why I think part of the grant timeline should just be available to everyone. A snapshot of the financials. I have seen financials of varying stages. So the one that I've seen, the biggest was actually 97 pages. And I love numbers. And I was like, oh, I'm not reading this. Like, I'm sure there's great information in here, but It's too much. And so really thinking about who needs to be a detail, so maybe that's your treasurer, but maybe the rest of the board just needs a high level snapshot of this is where we are. These are the things that are important to us to make a decision. And I also always say people need comparative information because context is important. It's one thing to say we have $5,000. Is that good or bad? I don't know that unless you tell me, oh, last year this time we actually had 15, or last year this time we didn't have any, so now we're doing great. And so giving people some sort of context, some sort of, okay, compared to, is going to be helpful for them to say, oh, we're doing better, or we're doing worse, or I need to reach out to so-and-so to make sure they do a thing. So context is so important. And any questions before I talk about like where to tell people things? All right. So I like to break down who's gonna know what or hear what, depending on where the context that they're gonna be in. So thinking about during the staff meeting, again, these are your people who are on the ground. I include volunteers in this. So they are essentially your doers. So someone is going to do something, what do they need to know, or what should you be communicating? And so to me, during the staff meeting, there should always be a reminder about the vision. Sometimes, people sign up, one, because I would like to be paid, I need a job. And so reminding them, hey, I know you signed up, this is what you signed up for. So every time we meet, I want you to have a reminder. We run Save Our Circus because we want every high school student to have a circus skill. That's important to us because it builds confidence. Letting them know that, what are we doing? Our ultimate goal, we're building confidence. And so everything that we're doing is geared towards that. That helps them not get stuck in the weeds, especially if you have a bookkeeper who's not super involved in programming. You want them to know that we're not spending money just for the fun of it. Like everything we do is because we're trying to accomplish this goal. You should talk about money. So I don't think you should go into, we spend $75 on paper clips. That is not a useful conversation, but you should be able to say, hey, this is where we're tracking. And we have these grants that came in that we really want to make sure you're going to use the money for. Give them the high level pieces of information that's going to help them understand how is this going to affect how I serve our community. And I say, remember to include someone from the accounting team. Maybe not every meeting, but occasionally, so that they have a reminder of, why do we do this work? Who else is involved? Accountants can be we can have a tendency to say like, just the facts, please. Like, I don't need these extra information. But that extra information is what's informing things. It's informing the decisions we make. It's helpful to know like, oh, so we want to instill that confidence. You want them to have a circus skill, but they also need a snack after school. Like, depending on our neighborhood, we need to be able to provide these other resources. We need to make sure the internet is working. We're doing these other pieces to support, to do more wraparound services. And so just thinking through, hey, this isn't a one-time, one-shot deal. This is a lot. This is a however long type of deal. So then you get to the board meeting and those people need a different set of things. And the things to remind them, or the things to look out for, are the eyes glazing over. So it's been me. I've seen it happen. I've seen people fall asleep during board meetings when the finances come up. And so really think about, are we giving too much information? So like the example of that 97 pages, I was definitely like, so who is reading this? What is it that you're going to do to prevent the eyes glazing over? Really thinking about what's going to be something that can engage your board members. And so for that, I like to think about, how much time did you give them to see the reports? Oftentimes they might just get it at the board meeting, and at that point it's too much information to process, or there's not enough time on the agenda. And so they're just like, I hope it looks good. Are there any red flags? Please tell me. So you want to give them some sort of time frame. So if you have an agenda, give it out to the board members ahead of time, or say, hey, if you can't do a week, because that might be pushing it for some organizations, maybe 2 to 3 days to say, hi, here's the agenda for the meeting. Here are some things we want to make sure you looked at before the meeting. So if they need to manage their time, they can consider, oh, I need to look at these 3 things before I show up. That'll make for a more productive meeting because you're not giving everyone things for the first time, because you have at least set the expectation. You will look at this beforehand. You will prepare for this meeting. And the other thing to think about to help inform what you're giving is if the same questions are coming up every single time. If you know every time you meet, they ask how many months of cash do we have? Maybe you can put that together in a dashboard. Maybe you can say, hi, bullet points. We have this many months of cash. That way it doesn't feel like we have to have a conversation. You can just say, hi, this is I know you're gonna ask it. I'm gonna put it on the agenda. Any questions about what to talk about in the board meeting, or have you had a board meeting where you're like, oh, this keeps coming up and I don't know how to answer them, so they can stop asking? Okay. So I think it's important to put it together. So like I mentioned, we have the chart of accounts. That is essentially the backbone of your organization, the backbone of your reports. It's the thing that tells you, what do we have? How are we gonna code things? What do all these terms mean? And so I wanna show you sort of a breakdown of how to bring all these pieces together to be a more informed and cohesive portion. And so what you have, I like to start with, what is it that we do? So I always say, start with your programs or your departments. So Save Our Circus, we have our after school program. We have our community development program. Most organizations are gonna have fundraising. So whether you have a person or not, you know that you have some fundraising to do. Someone needs to give us money. We need to find it. And so there's gonna be that fundraising arm. And then there's gonna be that administrative arm. We have to have insurance. Doesn't really matter what we're doing, we need insurance. And so really thinking about these components, and I break it into these buckets because one of the things as your organization grows that you're gonna wanna consider is the IRS Form 990. So that's an informational return your organization is filing every year. And as your organization grows, they're gonna want information based off of your programs, your fundraising, and your general operating. And so if you get into the habit of thinking about things into these 3 buckets, it makes it easier when it's time to say, oh, I have to report on that. You'll be used to thinking about them in those buckets. So that's just why I like to say, okay, what is it? What are we doing? And so as you think about your organization, if you're using a software already, maybe consider creating some classes. So that's what QuickBooks calls it. If you're using Xero, they might say departments. But just thinking about how can we make this more streamlined? If you're using a spreadsheet, if you're fancy, maybe you have like a code at the side. So we know one organization where they have a column that just says like, oh, this is for this program. And that way they can sort. It doesn't have to be a pivot table or something like super complex. You can just say, can I sort if I can put these little headers to the side? So making it easy for yourself. So this is going to be the core of what are the ways in which we operate. The next thing though, we need to eat. And so we're thinking of revenue in terms of how do we bring money in? So as your organization might be growing, maybe you have sponsorships. So Synergy has sponsorships, not Synergy, sorry. Save Our Circus has sponsorships because we're like, hey, we would like to have a fundraising event. Please give us money and we will put your name on a banner to say you are a sponsor. Synergy is a sponsor for Young Black Giving Back, for Give 828. So our name is going to be put up on something. It's not for advertising, so no one's saying necessarily to use our services. They're saying, hi, these people are here. Check them out if you think this is a need. You want to be careful about that language to say, we're just saying check them out. We're not saying they're good or bad or indifferent. We're saying they helped. Another thing you might have is performance fees, or maybe you have a fee for service. So maybe you say, oh, we do after school, we have after school tutoring program. We offer this on a sliding scale. So for some kids, it's going to be free. For some kids, maybe you say, okay, we're a Title I district, so knowing everyone in your area is going to be on free or reduced lunch. Oh, if you go to this school, it's going to be free. If you go to this school, it's going to be $10. Thinking about what it is about your organization that could you monetize or not. It's not mandatory that you charge fees or not charge fees. You have to think about your organization, how you grow. So we know some organizations who say, we will do trainings for free for the community, but if a business wants it, they need to pay. And so thinking about, you have a business, you can afford to pay us. That way you can have some sort of subsidy for the programming that you do. The other piece is going to be grants. So think of those as things you are applying for. Those can be with foundations or with government. And then contributions are just, we asked and they gave it. We're not applying for anything. They're just saying, hi, we heard that you needed some money. We're gonna just give it out. There are no reports attached. There are no strings attached. Well, there are no reports attached. We just want to make sure you have what you need. Any questions on those revenue categories? Any other revenue categories you were thinking about? Let's hear it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was writing when you said the 3 buckets. What were those 3 buckets?
So when I say buckets, I think of the departments. And so your first bucket is going to be programs. So what are the things that you do for your community? Think of it as, why do we exist? We exist to do these things. The other 2 buckets are the things that you don't exist to do, but you have to do them. So you have to fundraise. And then you have to have your administrative expenses. So we might have a building, or more likely than not, you have insurance. So those are the things that, you know, you have to have, but they don't really, they're not why you do the work you do.
Oh, okay. Good. Yes, because I'm at the point where we're trying to learn these things and get them together. We have acquired QuickBooks, and a guy from SCORE showed us a little tiny bit. And so now we're trying to get the stuff in there and know what it is, so that, you know, we're baby steps. So I was excited to see this being offered to,
Yeah, my pleasure. So when you're using QuickBooks, think of where I have programs and departments, think of those as classes in QuickBooks.
Okay.
So when you talk to them, you can be like, hey, we want to set up some classes. And this is just, we know organizations that don't use it. They just do the math at the end of the year. And for me, that feels like a lot to be like, I have to figure out the whole year. To me, it's easier to just do it as you go. But again, it's more about timing, like what's reasonable for you to manage.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. The other area that you want to think about are your expenses. And I say your expenses are going to fall into a few categories. Payroll for most of our organizations are going to be the biggest expense because, again, people need to eat. I think it's very important that we, when we get to the point where we realize we need to hire people, starting to think about what does it actually cost. And I say this because I know when we do grant applications, people are very nervous about putting salaries in. And I like to say, remind your funders that the programs don't exist if you don't have people to run them. And so salaries is not a negative. Ask them would they like you to send your employees to another organization to receive services. Like, we would like them not to need rent assistance if they work here. And so we have to pay them. Like, it's rent comes every month. And so we have to pay the people on a regular basis to make that possible. And so that's why I think it's important to reframe that language, and why it's important to be able to use the classes so that you can tell them that it's not just administrative. Like, it wasn't just the person in the office, but the people who are actually working in the community. We have to make sure that we're thinking about their being paid and how that looks. The other piece I think of for Save Our Circus is workshops. So when we say we do community development and we do after school programs, workshops are going to be a big part. So think about what are going to be your big drivers of costs, because I want those to be specific. So when people say, oh, we spent $75 on supplies, that feels very vague. Like no one really knows what that is. A funder has a hard time to say yes to, oh, you want me to fund supplies? Like that doesn't help them. But if you say, hey, we need you to fund after school program supplies, that gives them a better idea of saying, oh, it's for the after school. Yes, I would love to fund the after school program. So that's why for me, it's like, this is in the middle. Those are telling them, oh, this is for this specific thing. And then there are gonna be other program service costs. Maybe like when I worked at a school, what we found was, as we needed insurance specifically because we had kids. And so that to me isn't an administrative cost. This is the program we do. Our program is with children. And so we need to have insurance specifically for that. And so think about those types of things like, that's a program cost, but it's going to increase the more people we serve as we serve more people. And so we just want to be sure, hi, is this something this is the after school program. Yes, the after school program needs insurance. We need you to go ahead and help us pay for that. So those are the ways I try to think of those pieces. And then the fundraising, that can be, hey, we need items for the raffle. We need, so like auction items might be a thing. Sometimes you have software that's going to be specific to the fundraising. Those softwares are super expensive. So really being mindful of like, hey, this is a thing. Maybe we want to start planning that and knowing, because when you use something that's big, like, oh, it's just software, and you don't say, oh, it's fundraising software. When it's time to do the budget, people are like, well, why are we spending so much on software? And no one can tell until someone goes back to the office and like runs a report. And so really thinking about the labeling so that you can have a better idea up front. So maybe you don't know which specific software it is, but well, it was for fundraising and we need to make sure we keep track of donors. And so you can at least answer some questions without saying, oh, we need our bookkeeper to show up before we can tell you.
Right.
And then when I think other operating costs, that's where that directors and officers insurance is gonna fall. Maybe you have, regular postage, we have a printer. There's some things that you're just like, they're just here for operating. It's just what we have to do. Any questions about the expenses pieces or any other of this before we move on?
That was excellent. And right now we don't have any employees, so we're all volunteers, but we do workshops, we lease a printer, we do different things. So some of those jewels you dropped, I was able to put them in an area like, oh, okay, when I get to that.
Yeah.
So
and you may not have employees, but I always think of volunteers and volunteer appreciation. Pre-COVID, we had one organization that they would do a barbecue. So every summer they did a barbecue so the board members could meet the volunteers. And so they wanted to make sure, okay, we're going to keep money in the budget for that. And what they actually did, the board cooked. So the board members would be the ones on the grill and bringing the food, and the volunteers were just there to enjoy. And so really thinking about like, oh, how could we get people more involved? So they're going to reimburse them for doing the thing, but helping the volunteers have an opportunity to be served by other people is something just to think about, like, hey, how do we do this?
That's cool.
Yeah. So when we are winding down, but I want you to think about what you must have versus what's going to be nice to have. And so I say you must have a system. So that can be Excel, that can be QuickBooks. You just have to make sure that you're doing it on a routine basis. Sometimes it can be very overwhelming to be like, we have all these transactions to do, or there's so much going on. And so I like to say, break it down into pieces. So if you're like, I can only manage 15 minutes a day, maybe for those 15 minutes a day, you're gonna take a picture of all the receipts and put them in a folder so that that's filed. And then at the end of the week, you're gonna say, okay, for an hour, I'm gonna make sure all of these items are coded. And then at the end of the month, you're gonna say, okay, I'm gonna look at the bank statement. I'm gonna make sure we have all the receipts and everything is in this folder. So just making sure that there's a system to it will make it feel easier than saying, I'm gonna put it over there and never look at it again. Like, that's how you prevent the overwhelm, is to say, okay, I can give you 15 minutes. That I can do. And just making it smaller and smaller pieces than saying, I'm gonna give this 3 hours on a Friday. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna do that. But I can give you 15 minutes. I can do, like, think about what can be done on a regular basis. And that way, as you get volunteers, maybe you say, okay, our treasurer is gonna be the one to do that. You can give them a better idea of the time commitment. You can say, hi, this is one way you can do it. Dedication is important. So just like I said, the system and the dedication go together. I'm thinking through, like, I'm gonna make this a routine. So I'm gonna do this every day, or I'm gonna do this every Monday. Helps you get into the rhythm that you just know, this is what I'm gonna do. It's okay. I'm gonna put it through, I'm gonna do it and move on. I think sometimes we say, oh, we wait and do it all on one day and then we never wanna do it again. And so just saying, like, it's okay, it's Monday. This is the thing I do on Mondays. It's only gonna get this much of my day. And then priorities, really thinking about what is the thing that's gonna matter. Because I have done snack runs, I have cleaned up vomit, I have run financial statements and, printed out checks. Like, we will do all the things that needs to happen for the organization, but we have to think about what's gonna be the priority for the day or for the week. And so really helping yourself reevaluate, oh, the priority this week, we have grants that need to get applied for. And so I will get to this next week. And being honest with yourself to just say, like, if this is a priority, I have to work on this and shift this other thing. Like, not because I don't think it's important. You can't keep putting it off indefinitely, but really saying, okay, this week, this is the priority, and I'm not gonna feel bad for not scanning receipts. I'm not gonna feel bad because I didn't code a thing, because I know us getting funded is the most important thing. And then when it comes to reports, I like to say the most important reports to have are gonna be your balance sheet. So that's telling you what do we own? We have cash. Who do we owe? Oh, we gotta pay the Comcast bill. What's left over? And the income statement, that's gonna tell us, how did we bring money in and how did we spend money? Every other report is just a nice to have. These are the two that are gonna be the things that when funders say, can we have your financial statements? That's what they're asking for. They're saying, I wanna know what you have and I wanna know how you're bringing in money and spending the money. Any questions on those?
No.
And then the nice to have. It's nice to have a software. Like QuickBooks and Xero, you can set up a bank feed. It's going to automate a lot of things for you. And so those are nice to have. But sometimes when your organization is really small, they're not really necessary yet. And so really thinking about, what do we need and what's the cost going to be to make sure it's worth it. Checking to see, could we get a subscription at a discounted rate? What else is available so that you can be more mindful of the spending and not just be like, oh, they said that we have to have a thing, and so we bought it and now no one uses it. Because I've seen that happen. Someone says, like, we need QuickBooks. Someone's paying for it, but no one ever uses it. And so it's like, that's a nice to have. If no one's gonna look at it, we could have put that off for a little bit. The dashboard. So like I said earlier, when we talked about eyes glazing over, the dashboards are nice to have. The snapshots, nice to have. Is it the most important thing? No. And if you're thinking about priorities, if it's like, can I give these people this one thing? Yes. And getting them used to asking questions so you can develop the dashboard. Sometimes we're like, oh, a dashboard sounds cool and exciting and we want it, but what are we going to use it for? Really thinking through that so that it's a useful exercise and we're not like, oh, I heard it was a fun thing to have and we should do it. the cash flow projections is on my nice to have list because organizations go without it. Like people exist without knowing what their cash flow is. But I do think it's one of the things that if you're like, I need to prioritize, I would prioritize the cash flow over like a dashboard of like pretty charts. I would want to know, do we have enough money to get through the summer? Like that to me is going to be a more pressing issue. If I had to rank, like, what's the thing we're going to work on? So those are just the pieces that I think come together to help you get a better handle of the accounting for your goals, to get you to say like, is this the thing that's going to take us to the next level, to serve more people, to really accomplish our mission? And remembering to keep your mission at the forefront. Your bookkeeper, your accountant isn't there to like micromanage and tell you how to spend the money because they're not the ones in the field. You're there to inform them to say like, no, that is a program supply because if I don't have it, the kids are they need mats to land on. So it's not a yoga mat for fun. This is like, I need someone not to hurt themselves. And so really thinking through like, how are we going to talk about that so that people aren't just like, I don't think you really need this. So any questions before we wrap up?
You covered this so well, and I was worried about being in a pool of big fish who have all these know-it-all, and I just found out about this webinar today.
Oh, I'm so glad
And
you
so
joined.
maybe about 2 hours ago, and I was like, I got to get on there because I don't have a clue what we're doing, and we're so small, and I think we miss out on a lot of opportunities because we don't, like one of our programs, we do first aid and CPR training for American Heart Association certifications, and another one has safe sitter babysitter training. And these are things that we want to be able to offer more to people. Because when we initially started that, there was a grant that gave our organization the skills and training and our certifications and stuff. And we maintained that, and we had scholarships for people to attend the classes for free. So those scholarships are gone, but we still try to keep the cost down to 50% of what other places are offering it for, so that we can reach the underserved. And sometimes people can sponsor students for that, but we don't know anything about fees for service and documenting things and how to set up books or do anything like that. And there are some things that we would like to do that maybe we don't have volunteers for, and would like to be able to pay some instructors and stuff like that, but we don't know what we're doing financially. So we're hesitant and we draw back because we don't want to jump out there and do something wrong. So
Yeah,
that's why I'm here.
no, I'm so glad you're here. I think it's, as the organization grows, like your needs are going to change, and you're going to see like, oh, we really should pay attention to this thing starting now. And so just being flexible and saying like, oh, how are we going to do this? Like all the different revenue ways, those will come. Like starting small and saying, okay, this is what we do. I think sponsorships, like you've had the initial like, hey, here's some scholarships, maybe reaching out to some local businesses and say, hey, would you like to sponsor us training? Because we're in your area, we would love to see some more local support, and just let them know like, these are who we serve and we think we'd love to partner with you. Think about businesses that are aligned with your mission. So you do some CPR training, you said. So maybe if there's any doctor's office, doesn't matter which doctor, like just saying like, hey, we are doing CPR trainings and we know our clients go to the doctor. Would you be open to sponsoring or, making a scholarship for 5 participants to come, and then just seeing what that looks like so that they can have an idea, like that feels like a low cost commitment. Like I don't know what you charge, but I think that could be something that makes it easy for them to say, like, this is what we're doing. We'll put your logo or your card in the packet of information so that this is a thing that happens. So yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I love brainstorming. I'm like, throw me all the bad ideas. I want to know if it's terrible or not. And so I love brainstorming. I'm going to give you some other information in terms of my contacts. So you can send me an email. For me, education is really important. It's why I feel like some organizations don't grow is because they're like, where do I ask the question? And so they're nervous. And so we developed Impact Basics, which is our online course to support that. But I am the type of learner, I'm better at interaction. Like if you tell me to watch the videos, I'm like, ooh, that's gonna be terrible. And so we actually, twice a month, we do like office hours where you can bring your questions and say, hey, I have a question about this thing. It doesn't have to be about a video. It's just, this is the thing that's happening and we just need to talk through it. And so the promo code will give you 20% off of the course. So I want to say it'll make it just under $500. And that's for it's for 13 weeks. So for both, it's for essentially 3 months. You would be in the program. We can troubleshoot what's happening at your organization and be able to say, okay, at the end of this, we know that you've accomplished some sort of setup or you feel like you've done another thing so that you can move on to some other area. Like accounting may not be the thing you don't want to spend a whole year on. So being able to move. So yeah, so we'll get this information to Nima so she can send it out to you all. And yeah, I'm so glad that you were able to join. And like I said, there's my contact information. You can reach out if you're like, hey, this thing came up. Even if I don't have the answer, I try to network with other nonprofit providers. So I may know someone who can point you in the right direction.
This is great, great, great. So today I got the email from our Central New York Community Foundation, which told us about give828.org. And you were on there as a resource as this workshop. So it kind of trickled down through the thing. So I'm happy to hear about all this today and very productive morning. Yeah. Afternoon, I think it's afternoon now. Thank you.
No worries. Again, you have a good day. Brenda, Nima, you will be in touch and everyone enjoy the rest of the day.
This was really great. Thank you so much. And Brenda, don't forget to register for Give828.
I registered.
Oh,
I
you
registered today.
Great.
Yes, great. And I've got several emails from something where they verified our organization after we put in our EIN number and stuff like that. So I'm on the way now. I got to watch those videos about how it all works and stuff. So
great.
Thank you for the opportunity. You guys are wonderful.
Yeah, this was really great. I learned a lot myself. So thank you so much.
Yay, my pleasure. All right. Bye.
Bye.